Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. Welcome to another live stream. Tonight I've got a special guest, another YouTuber out there doing his thing. Of course, I'm talking about Matt Legrand. Great guy. I've learned to kind of be a good friend of his. We've been talking a lot and, we've got a lot in common. And so I thought it would be fun to bring him on tonight. Before we get into that, make sure you check his channel out down in the description down below. And also check out the merch store if you're interested in a hat, sticker, shameless plug up front. I've got about 19 of these hats left, so there's not many left in stock. And once they go, I don't know if I'm going to reorder, but we'll find out. Okay, yeah, I think that's all I've needed to talk about up front. Let's bring Matt on with that all the way. Let's see if I can do this right this time. It's always too many button clicks. Hey, Matt, how's it going, man?
Hey, how's it going?
Everyone didn't catch the 5 minutes of us troubleshooting microphones and headphones before this.
Yep.
But we made it. We're here and we're live.
Always a game. It's always,
yeah,
and
man.
I was like rushing in here into my little office studio to like set up everything as fast as I can, like light switch. And then microphone. Is this microphone going to work? I doubt it, but let's try anyway. So
Yeah, I mean, I was running way behind. I had like dinner with my family, ran over here, set up a new light. Also, how's the light look, everybody? Does this look okay? And then I had my MacBook needed an update. Everything needed an update. My phone crashed. Like just everything went wrong. So I apologize that we're kind of late tonight. But I appreciate the people watching now. We've got a bunch of people watching already. So that's exciting. So for people who don't know Matt's channel, Matt is a fellow YouTuber. His content of choice is mainly triathlon stuff. And he also falls into the fitness tech. We've got watches and sensors and all that fun stuff over there. So we end up sharing a lot of the same kind of content, which is fun, right?
which is good.
And I think in this live stream, I kind of want to talk about, I don't want to like so much interview you, even though you're a fantastic human being. I want to just like speculate on what we're in store for in 2021 in terms of like fitness tech, because I think it's going to be an exciting year. What do you think?
I think that there's going to be some really great products come out. And I think that there's going to be some companies that maybe don't do as well, right? So I think it's going to be a very interesting year for the marketplace.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I'm like, like if Suunto did something big, that would like really, thinking. Yeah. Cause they've been like kind of a sleeper, I don't want to, I hate to like, be negative towards them because I want to encourage them to do something bold.
Absolutely.
And I think go ahead.
I was just thinking like, any of the underdogs, like we pull for, I mean, obviously you try not to be biased towards any, certain product or anything like that, but you do want the companies that are new or emerging to kind of like, come on, man, you can do it. You kind of have that feel for them. Suunto I worry about. Yeah,
same here. Because like, I don't know if you noticed, but like they just discontinued Moves Count, their old platform. I got the email like a couple of weeks ago, like, oh, it's dead now. Now you're only allowed to use the Suunto app, and that's it. And so many people, after that happened, I got like an influx of comments on my Suunto content, being like, man, the Moves Count. It's just such a weird move for them to like give up this kind of a polished platform and then shift into just an app, kind of a basic app. I mean, I do like the little course builder on it, but that's about it.
I was just wondering if this was like the signal of like the beginning of the end kind of stuff. Like, are they kind of done or are they moving towards a different product style? Kind of, I'm thinking like, Android wearable type stuff is like, I'm just not sure what their plan of attack is. I can't tell.
Yeah.
But I don't know either, because I really haven't reviewed a lot of Suunto stuff on my channel at all. So.
Yeah, they sent me the 7 and the 9, and I made a video about the 7, and I still haven't made a video about the 9 because it feels like just, even though it's not that old, it just feels old.
Yeah.
In 2021 compared to all these crazy things that have come out recently. It's a cool watch, but it's freaking massive. First of all, it's like a tank, and it just kind of like the specs aren't like mind blowing. What do you expect to see or what do you hope to see from a triathlon standpoint? Like, what's some feature that you don't think exists yet for that crowd?
Well, honestly, there's, Wahoo did this watch, the Wahoo Rival, and it was interesting to have this like touchless transition feature where you could basically do, perform a triathlon race, hit the start at the beginning of the race and hit stop at the end, and it would figure out everything else. And that to me was like, hey, we're innovating in the sport of triathlon. Like that's very rare because I just don't think a lot of companies care about triathlon, which is very reasonable, right? Like you really do want to target your largest markets to kind of be a profitable company, and triathlon might not be that particular situation. And I feel like ultra running might be in the same boat, right? Where you're just like,
Oh yeah,
we know we're small potatoes when you're comparing us to runners as a whole. But when someone kind of like panders to your your little core group, like you kind of have to appreciate it. As far as like what could come next, you know the obvious stuff is like, well, your standard watch with the same features, but you've got cellular connectivity, right? Like that's gonna, I almost feel like
yeah,
that's a given at this point. It's hard to speculate on like the big stuff, like what else could be coming down the wire. Different display technologies for sure. I just don't know if, for triathlon, for ultra running, really in a lot of ways they're similar. You need big battery life. And I think when you start to look at certain display technology like OLED and stuff, you just don't have the battery opportunity to kind of go for that Ironman distance. So, I don't know is a real answer. The real answer is I don't know what they're going to come up with to kind of, open up the marketplace. I'm excited. I wasn't expecting a touchless transition from Wahoo. I thought that was very unique.
Yeah, and you bring up a good point with that. Like, a company niching down like that is really, I think it's a smart move because that's kind of Wahoo's only saving grace with the with that watch. I mean, it's a cool watch, but we got to be honest here. It's not as full featured as other watches in that price range. For $350, if you stack it up to a Coros Pace 2 or something like that, there's a lot on the Pace 2.
Significantly less in, price wise. The Pace 2 is significantly less, and you've got a very full featured watch.
Yeah. So. And I think that's what Coros did right. Like from the beginning, they niched down to the Ultra Runner, basically. I mean, it does other stuff, but they gave their watches to like Sage Canaday and Hayden Hawks, and they got all these athletes in the door up front. And then you see companies like Polar. I think they just endorsed a NASCAR driver or something.
Yeah, or Formula One or someone. I don't. It might not have been NASCAR, but it was some sort of driver. And I'm thinking like, okay, I'm not sure that appeals to me. Who are we going after here?
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm sure those guys are in great shape, and it takes a ton of work to get there. But it's not like it's not totally obvious from like a Couch to 5K person's perspective. Like, I'm not gonna see that guy and be like, I really want that watch because he drives a car.
Now that he has that watch, I need it. No, what's interesting is they announced that with the Polar Vantage V2, which is clearly a triathlon watch, right?
Yeah.
And I felt like that guy, when he was training for his driving stuff, would like do triathlon type stuff. And I was like, okay, they could have just snagged a triathlete to do a lot of this stuff and save.
They did endorse that woman. I forget her name. Claybar, is that her last name? Triathlete, foreign woman. It was that guy with the NASCAR, and then it was her. They were like the two spokespeople for the Vantage V2, I think.
I don't know. I'm not sure which triathlete it was that they picked up, but I think that they have a couple of athletes for sure on the triathlete side. I feel like they have one of my friends, Eric Lagerstrom. He also has a YouTube channel. I think he's a Polar sponsored athlete, or at least he was. I think he still wears their stuff. So they do have a couple triathletes for sure.
By the way, I just now noticed the hat you're wearing.
I wasn't sure if I should wear it, but then I was like, you know what? I've got the old hat and the new hat for Chase the Summit, and it's like I feel like the old hat really like just means like you're old school. You're an old school fan. Like, yes, you definitely want to show your age and your how long you've been with the channel, and then you break out the new hat, and people are like, yeah, that, I do like the
think
new hat. I like the
I
new
think
hat
I
a touch
bought
better. And so
I think I bought 25 of those. So you're one of 25. Yeah.
one of 20, man, I need to have this like signed next time I see you. I'm gonna have you sign it also.
Let's say hi to some of the people in the chat tonight. We've got Steve Fissett. Have a good night. Thanks for joining. We've got Christian Herrera. What's up, ladies and gentlemen of the internet? Stealing your line. And I got
Perfect.
a giant graphic on the screen because I'm streaming in the wrong size. That's a nice move, Dave. Why is it so big? How do I shrink that? Oh, man.
While you figure that out, I'm opening up a drink.
Yeah, what are you drinking tonight?
I've got to decide. I've got one of the athletic beers that I talked about, which
Oh, yeah. I
not-
should have got some of those so we could have talked about it together. Darn.
we could have, but I'm not the hugest fan of these. And it's not because it's non-alcoholic. I would love to have a non-alcoholic beer that tastes fantastic, but I think they're okay. But my favorite beer is this one, which is a Breakside Wonderlust. And Breakside is a Portland beer, which is right where I live. I live just north of Portland in the suburbs of Portland. But yeah, Wonderlust is amazing beer. So I'm going to crack this one. Did you already figured out the sizing? I don't even have time to open the beer. What are you drinking?
My old standby, the Sierra Nevada Torpedo
Sierra
Extra
Nevada.
IPA. Yeah. So hey, you're real close to Mount Rainier and all that stuff, right?
Yes.
How far off are you from that?
I'm actually closer to Mount Hood because I'm right by the river. So I'm probably like maybe I would say 2 hours to Mount St. Helens and an hour and a half to Mount Hood, something like that. But yeah, I mean, we can go ski up on Mount Hood if we want to. And then we can go see the coast if we want to as well. Kind of, hour either direction.
The at the very beginning of Chase the Summit, when it was a blog, my big goal was to climb Mount Rainier. That was like my A goal at the time, was to do a 2-day trip up Mount Rainier. Never did it, but that got me going. Who else we got in here? Okay, we got Fit Gear Hunter. Did you see the Ginger Runners 10-year anniversary video? Oh man, that was so good. Did you see that?
Yeah, I did. I don't know if I watched all of it, but I'm just such a huge fan of his that, you see someone like that that's been doing kind of what we're doing. I mean, I know it's different because he does things, his own way. But, he's been doing it for 10 years. And I just think that is so cool. And granted, time flies. Like, I'm going to be coming up on 3 years, I think, on YouTube. Wow. And I know you've only been on YouTube a lot less than that, but I think I'm coming up on 3 years in another couple months or something like that. But you can start to see how like time just flies and all of a sudden you're at 10 years, but man, a decade. That's so cool.
Man, that intro to that video with like the clips of him, like at the very beginning and all the way through time, it was, man, it was like, it almost brought a tear to my eye. It was like really so cool.
Did you think that his first video, like he still has his personality and he's still very good on camera? And I'm just thinking to myself, like, you look at my first video and in my video from like yesterday, and I'm just like, man, his stuff 10 years ago is better than my stuff now.
Oh man, I went back and watched my first video, which was I had a couple. It was first one ever was about getting ready for my first 100-mile ultra, and the pacing and like the editing is so cringy. I was like hovering over the delete button, but I didn't do it. I left it up there.
I think you leave it up there just for that kind of like nostalgic, reference point to where you've, how far you've come. The person that I like to look at for that is MKBHD.
Oh, so good. Yeah.
Marquez. He's been posting. So I don't know how long he's been on YouTube, but I think it's, it's more than a decade, right? It's whatever. It's probably like 15 years or something like that. So he was literally a child when he started and he's left everything up there. So it's like, Windows 2000 and he's talking about it and he's this little kid and he's talking about the update for the, the new Windows operating system. And you're just like, wow, how cool is this, that this guy became who he is? I really respect his channel a lot. And I think he does a really good job. So
the difference between someone like him and me is like, you watch his 10-year-old video, he's 10 years old. talking about
Yep.
like his first laptop or something, and he's
Right.
doing a better job on camera than I do now, but he's 10.
Yeah.
I'm like, how
It-
did that? It's like a natural thing. Like that was his purpose in life, was to be that guy. And now he's, at the top, which is amazing.
Yeah, and I watch a couple of his things. I don't watch all of his things, but like every single time he doesn't do what I do, which is and all this stuff. And I'm like, how is he so clear all the time? You're killing me.
Yeah. Yeah. You'd hate if you saw my editing process, my timeline's like just totally hacked up because there's so many. I know what looks like in waveform now. So I just go in and take those out.
I just leave a lot of my stuff in there. Just if I can say anything coherent at all, I'm like, leave it in. Leave it in.
I think, I don't know, yours sounds very concise, like almost as if you script. Do you script all of your videos?
I actually do. It depends on the video. So the last one I did, I was talking about a workout. I just shoot right from the hip, right? And that's I think more fun and it comes off more natural. And then when I do, when I'm talking about a review for a watch or something like that, I have to have a fair amount of notes of details and things like that, because I promise you I don't remember the weight and the specs of any sort of watch or anything like that. It's just like, I mean, I do know a lot of it because we've been doing this a long time, and it's like, it's a 1.2 inch screen with 240 by 240 pixel display. Like, you just know that that's going to be the display. They're all the same. But a lot of times where you're like, okay, what was the battery life again? Like, how many hours GPS? Like, if I say this from memory, I'll get it wrong, and then I'll hear about it in the comments for the rest of my life. Whereas if I double check those stats, it's going to be better.
I made a mistake in my Apple Watch video. I said something along the lines of you can't edit the data fields on the built-in app or fitness app, which is incorrect. I was wrong. And I got maybe 120 comments telling me I was wrong on that one. So that was fun.
Yeah. The comments are hard. Comments are tough.
They are.
I feel like I have pretty thick skin, and but I also really don't like to make mistakes and have to live with them for a long time. So that's the problem with YouTube. It's just like, they're right there, and you either delete the video or you just leave it in. So it's hard.
Well, there is a little hack that you can actually go in and cut things out after the fact, but I didn't tell you that.
Can't.
Oh yeah, you can. Who else do we have here? We got JPD from Vancouver, BC. Love the podcast, Dave. Getting back into trail running, and listening to you when I'm on the trail. That's awesome.
Oh, great.
Any tips from you two on getting back into running? My only advice is just to get your shoes on and get out the freaking door, because that's the hardest part. I say that over and over. I say it to my wife. Any of my friends who are like, oh man, my mileage is decreasing. I think the hardest part, even if like you're a gym goer or you ride a bike, just getting the gear on, like getting ready to go, and then opening the door and shutting it behind you. After that happens, it's so much easier.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that, Matt?
Start slow. And, I would say, don't stress about the volume of running that you're doing and focus on more like frequency. Like, so, if you can, like you said, get out the door, if you can do that, whatever it is, like if 3 times a week is easy for you, then 5 or whatever it is. But just getting out the door, you don't have to do a 20 miler each day or whatever it is. And if you were doing that in the past, awesome. But like, scale it back and focus on frequency, and you'll kind of build those little intrinsic muscles that are good at kind of repetitive patterns. It's just so nice to just do that. Like, oh, I'm only going to do a mile or 2. And it's like, that works. I know you were doing running every day for a little while, right?
Still doing it. Yeah. Still have the streak
You're
going.
on it. Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know. I didn't want to say like, that you're still doing well if you were like, I'm done with it.
The other thing I want to mention for JPD here is try not to. One big thing I see happening a lot, especially now in the pandemic with Strava, social media, don't compare yourself to other people, because Strava is a terrible place for that. Strava has a lot of good qualities to it, where you can track your fitness and people can give you thumbs ups and, everything's good there. But if you go on someone's profile and they're dropping 200 miles a week, you can't feel bad about that. I think that happens a lot now, especially in isolation. So just watch out for that. Just be proud of what you're doing. Just focus on time on feet. Don't focus on, dropping huge mileage. we got Oscar Farias. What's up, bro? Hope you're doing good. I hope you're doing good too, Oscar.
What's
We got
up,
Ryan.
Oscar?
We got Ryan Clayton in the house. He says the Sunto 10 better be fire. I totally agree. It better be like, it better just rock the whole industry and bring them back. That would be
Fingers
amazing.
crossed.
Yeah, might happen. You never know. We got Figure Hunter for both of you. Product predictions, specifically the big four: Garmin, Coros, Polar, and Sunto. How about yeah? Why don't you tackle this, Matt? What do you think is going to be? I mean, it's kind of hard to say,
Okay.
but what do you think is going to be like the big thing coming from the big four?
I think Garmin, the big thing is going to be the 955. I think that's going to drop. I actually have no insider information. If I had insider information, I would not talk about it. Like, that's exactly how you know I don't. You know, the reason you know I don't have insider information is because I'll talk about it. I think the 955 will come out soon, you know, in the next couple of months, and I think that's going to be kind of I think it's going to be a solid device. I think it's going to be one of the best devices on the market, if not the best device on the market. I think that we'll be very excited to review it. I think it's one of those watches that we'll use very regularly. I think Coros will update some of their, you know, higher end watches just because, man, that Pace 2 is so compelling. It's like, I feel like they need to have they need to distinguish their higher end devices a little bit. And
They
so
really they cannibalized. I feel like they cannibalized the Apex a little bit. The only
Right.
thing the Apex had going for it is just it's nicer. Like when you hold it, feels better. But Pace 2 is so nice for $200. It's hard to beat.
right. So I think Coros, I would expect an update from Coros. I actually think Polar will see some smaller updates that we're not going to be super excited about. So I don't think they're going to update like their Vantage. I don't know if they'll update that Polar Grid X. That would be interesting if they did. I don't think they will. I think it's going to be. I think we're going to be quiet. We're not hear much from Polar, but I could be wrong.
I think
they also do heart rate monitors. So
the Polar
they,
the
you know,
Polar
we see
Grid
something that way.
the Polar Grid X, if they did update it, if they do the typical Polar move, if you're listening, Polar, because sometimes they do, and I get an email. If they updated the Grid X to like the Grid X2, and then didn't roll back features in the firmware in typical Polar fashion,
Yeah.
that would really rub a lot of people the wrong way, because it's already starting to get to people where like the Vantage V2 has basic minor things like menu tweaks that they could definitely put in the Grid X, and they just won't because they want to differentiate their products. But it's like the polar opposite of what Coros is doing, because Coros is like, let's put it all out there. If the device is capable enough and has the hardware, put it in. And Polar's over here like, nope, you got to pay more for this one because you want to customize your menu. It drives me nuts. Sorry to interject.
I will say that Polar does have that route in a lot of their activities that they do. Like you can do open water swimming on like any watch, even if it's just not going to work. Like you could select the open water activity and go swim open water with your Polar Unite watch with your phone back at the dock. It's not going to work. Right. So I mean, I think it's awesome. I applaud Polar in some ways, but in my video, and I don't remember which one it was, but there's a Polar Grid X video. Maybe it was Polar Grid after. I think I said something like, you guys need to update this. And I was specifically talking to Polar, like, you should bring some of those software updates into the Grid X. It was at the time, it was like, this has only been out for 6 weeks or something. You can't just leave it behind on software updates. And, you know, a lot of the internal stuff is very much the same. I mean, people will still be able to distinguish between those watches. The Vantage V is a lot lighter weight. The Grid X is a little bit beefier. It feels more like a outdoorsy kind of watch, versus the Vantage V kind of feels, you know, like that lightweight, I don't know, runner triathlon watch. But yeah. So I don't expect a ton of updates from Polar. Sunto, we've talked about already. I have my doubts. I don't know, but I don't know.
I don't know how to feel about them. I'm really hopeful because I would, you know, they were such a staple for a long time. You went to a race and it was either a Garmin or a Sunto on people's wrists. Mm-hmm. And now we're at a point where it's mainly, I mean, for me, ultra marathons is like, you see Coros, Garmin, sometimes Polar. and very rarely Suunto at this point, which is kind of weird.
At triathlon, you see a lot of Garmin for sure. Because if you think about it, they have a bit more history with triathlon. I mean, if you think back, they've, you'll see people wearing those big GPS watches and things like that at triathlons, which you just have more time. And I do feel like ultra marathoning is a bit of a newer sport, and so you don't have people wearing super old technology as much. And you see super old bikes at triathlon and stuff like that, which I think is good. It means these people have made their purchases and they're not just jumping on the next shiny object that they see. And, you and I are a bit of a problem because we talk about the shiny new things all the time. And, it's kind of like, do you put out that vibe of like, you need to buy something every couple months? Because I don't think we want to put out that vibe. We want to tell people like, hey, get as much value as you can out of these devices. We're going to talk about what's new and what's great and what's fun, but don't feel like you need to get every single thing that's out there.
Yeah, that is something I struggle with a little bit. Cause I get that question all the time. What's the best watch? Should I get a 245 or a 945? Should I get this or that? And there's never any context around what they're trying to achieve. Like, are you running? Are you cycling? Are you a triathlete? Are you ultra running? Are you just somebody who wants to get into better shape? And I struggle with that all the time. Because, I'm a frugal person to some extent.
Yeah.
But here I am, like, kind of peddling everyone's brand new shiny object. But that's our job, man. That's what we got to do on these YouTube channels.
No, I mean, usually in the comment sections, people will be like, I have this, Garmin 735 and it's on its last leg. And what should I get next? And I'm like, make it last. You're getting such good value out of that watch. I'll literally will say that every time. And then I'm like, then if you make it last a little bit longer, all of a sudden, some new watch that isn't out on the market yet will be out on the market. So,
yeah. That's another common comment I see is, when will the Fenix 7 come? Maybe, I don't know. I see that probably 10 or 20 times a day at this point. It's crazy.
I do think, what's interesting is I think that one kind of change in the marketplace is that we are going to see more frequent releases, and they're probably not going to be as massive of an update because I think that we're going to start to see, I don't know if it's going to be yearly or, a year and a half, but that's very much, significantly faster than it used to be, right? Like where you would get something every 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
I think we can blame. I would be an example of that, right? So, if that one comes out in the near future, or I think, and I actually think all of this is pressure from Apple, right? So Apple, like Clockwork is going to be a yearly release. I think Garmin right now is probably aiming for like a year and a half. So that's a huge jump from them. So I think the Fenix 6 or Fenix 7, I'm sorry, is going to be something that will come out not sooner than we think. I mean, I think you and I have a guess at when we think it would come out, but, maybe summer or fall or something like that, but I don't think it's going to be 2 years from now.
I would guess like August, like October, that time frame at some point, but who knows? Again, we have no insider knowledge. We're just speculating here.
Yeah. Like I said before, if we knew, we would not talk about it. So
that's very true. We got Daniel Saunders who says the Suunto X. Ooh, that's a great name. They should go with that.
I like that.
The Suunto X. Suunto is all other Nordic. Suunto is like all other Nordic technology. Dense, Nokia, Ericsson, all crap. Thanks for sharing, Rich. That's his opinion, not ours, by the way. Personally, I think Suunto would do something because they released relatively large watch updates in October. Yeah, that's true. They released some new course navigation features in October. That was kind of a pretty big update to the Suunto 7. That was good to see. Honestly, if they took the 7 and put like really good battery life into it, I would probably have a lot easier time swallowing the price of it. Although it got a lot cheaper these days. Ryan Tiermate, I just wanted to see a solid state battery come to the GPS watch market. That's an interesting, that would be cool. Here in Bend, Oregon, we call athletic beer just beer. That's awesome.
So this is this athletic brewing company, and they're actually somewhere in New England, I think.
Really?
Yeah, Connecticut. No, I'm not sure. Um, but yeah, it's non-alcoholic basically, and they have a couple of different options. And what I've seen is that they also do small releases.
Is it
Um,
non-alcoholic or is it non-alcoholic? Like, is there
it's
0.05?
non-alcoholic. It officially says non-alcoholic on there. But yeah, they usually when it is non-alcoholic, it's usually like 0.05 or something like that,
Yeah.
and then only 70 calories. So if you drink this, you actually get faster.
It's speed beer. That's what it is.
But yet here I am drinking the Wonderlust.
Marty Logan says, "Hey guys, what are both of your current fitness watches of choice that you're wearing? What do you got on right now, Matt?"
Okay, so I get this question a lot, and the answer is like typically, I have like a wall of watches which I am just staring at kind of off to the side, but whatever's charged up, I'll grab. Right now, this is the Garmin 745. I have a video coming. Garmin 745. I have a video coming out soon where it's like I've had this watch for 100 days. When I post the video, it's going to end up being like 120 days or something like that. It takes me a long time to post videos. But I'm wearing it a little bit more frequently because I want to like refresh my minds of like when I grab this watch over a different watch. So, A, like what watch is charged up? I grab that one. B, like I'm kind of leaning towards this one a little bit more because I do really like this watch, but also I've got that video coming up. I want to make sure that I know what I'm talking about when I talk about this watch.
Yeah.
I do think that the Garmin watches tend to be my favorite for swimming. And I feel like no one cares about swimming except for me. And I actually really care about swimming. And one of my problems with all of these devices is like you get in the pool and you're like, oh, these things, none of the developers really care about swimming. It'll tell you the distance sort of, but they're not really giving you like, drill mode, and you do all these different sets and things like that when you're doing swimming, and you really want to track all that data. And it's like, you're just going to end up with the wrong distance. And so it's super frustrating when you're swimming and you don't have what you need to have. Garmin does it right. And so the 945 or the 745, like no matter what I grab, those are going to work in the water pretty well when I swim. And I love swimming. I love running the most, but I am, injured all the time. So swimming's great for me.
Yeah.
What do you wear?
Yeah, no. So I agree with the 745 became like I just was grabbing it all the time. I don't know why. It's just the form factor is so small. And even though the battery life isn't so amazing, there's still something to it. It's got thin bezels. It looks modern. It's comfortable. It's very light. So I was wearing that regularly for a while, but I recently switched over to the Phoenix 6S Sapphire.
Okay.
So because I like having maps, I like having the maps on the wrist, and it's basically the same form factor of a 745, but just with all the Phoenix stuff in it. So
and Sapphire.
And Sapphire, yeah. So I've been banging this awful, stuff. I'm pretty reckless with my watches, and they always end up scratches all over them. But yeah, I also have a watch wall here in my studio. But the funny thing is, there's nothing in these boxes. Check this out. This is my professional. Let me hide my shipping labels here. Here's my professional. This is how I transport my watches.
Yeah, that's right. Because you go back and forth from your house to the studio, right?
Yeah. So they just
bring the watch box.
So I just have this cardboard box full of watches that I tote around in my backpack.
Yeah, I just have a wall of Chase the Summit hats and watches.
That's how it should be.
as it should be. Yeah. But the 745, like you're right. There's something about it. Like, and I'll talk about this in my video when I post it, but like the GPS accuracy is fantastic. Like we've talked about that. It's like, I use it as my comparison to all other watches for GPS accuracy. And I think whenever Garmin does the 955, it'll catch up, I assume. But man, I don't know why this watch is just very accurate, and it has all the features that you need. And when you have a lot of watches, battery life isn't as big a deal, because if the battery dies, you just go grab whatever the next watch is. But, it is hard to recommend this watch when, for a very similar price, you can get the watch with better battery life, the 945, and it
Yeah.
has maps, and it has, so I think, yeah, you and I kind of see eye to eye, I think, on those two watches. It's like, don't price them the same if the 955 is so much better. I think they
funny,
kind
though.
of corrected that stuff.
It's
for the
funny though.
pricing,
A lot of people still choose the 745 like purely because the bezel. People hate the bezel. Like the one thing I see in the comments all the time is that bezel. I can't stand looking at it. So they pay more for less features.
I know. But I really think they're paying for the smaller size.
Yeah.
And it's a little bit lighter, but I mean, it's a weird kind of dichotomy of prices there, especially when the 945 was less than the 745. There was like a brief moment. I don't know if you noticed that on Amazon. There was like a brief moment when, that actually dipped under the 745.
Really? I didn't catch that.
So it was right around Black Friday or something like that. Like it was only a couple dollars under, but it was under.
I think I saw it drop into like the high 400s at some point, like 475. Yeah. That's crazy. That's such a good price for that watch. Insane. Steve Fissett, thanks from Montreal, Canada. Thanks for joining. Ultra Dad, thanks for stopping by, man. A little late here. Matt, what's the latest with the Ironman races this year? Is Kona going to happen?
So Kona is almost always in October. However, what they did was they actually scheduled it for February this year, which then it didn't, and they canceled it. Right. I could see something like that happening again, where they originally have it scheduled for October and then they bump it to February. Again, a lot of the problem is that they don't have the opportunity to have qualifying races. Just because, I think we will get into the summer and we will probably not have a ton of race opportunities early in the summer. And then maybe late in the summer we will. It's very hard to say. I think, maybe it's okay if I say this on Dave's channel, but I wouldn't say Ironman is a tricky brand where they're going to cancel races last minute. They're, in a lot of ways, not super friendly to their Patreons, the people that are, purchasing this race. They know that they've got your money. They know that you're going to choose Ironman because what else are you going to do? And so I think that they take some liberties, like canceling races late. And so I don't think we're going to know what's going to happen to Kona until the very last minute this coming year. Again, I think as we get into the summer and more people get vaccines, maybe. I could definitely see them doing the same thing, moving it to February again to just buy them some time.
I wonder if, some of these races just start doing like elites only and like doing what they did for that Hoka Carbon X2 challenge where all the athletes were tested before when they entered the door. It was like a little bubble where no one had to wear a mask because they were tested 5 times before they walked in the door. And then they all lived together, basically. Even like the announcers and the crew and everybody was just overly cautious and tested like left and right. I could see that becoming a thing because, bigger, higher profile events like Kona are spectator sports to some extent. Yeah. And maybe that'll be the path forward. And then like normies like us have to do it virtually or something. Who knows?
Yeah. It's interesting because you start to think about like, Kona is the triathlon's big thing, but like the real big races are like the New York Marathon, the Boston Marathon, like these races where you have 50,000 people come from all over the world and they descend into basically some small town outside of Boston, and they corral all these people tightly together, and they're going to send them off in these massive waves. And you think about that and you're like, yeah, we used to do that. And now like when you see people hug on TV, you're like, whoa, they're not even, I don't know. I think it's going to be a while. Boston is actually, they announced that they're going to, have a race. They announced they're going to have a race in October, and my wife is qualified, so we're hoping to go. And so I'm not sure what's going to happen. Like, are they going to say like, hey, if you've had a vaccine, you can race, or Are there going to be that like haves and have-nots kind of situation with the vaccine? I don't know how things are going to go.
Yeah, that's
Maybe
going to
they'll
be a
do
weird one.
testing.
That's going to be
Yeah.
a really weird one because you've got, the elites
Yes.
and they come from all over the world,
Right.
and
Well, I think
to,
with Boston, you'll get people from all over the world in the non-elites. So
it's true. Yeah.
that's the problem. I think with that race is people are going to fly in from everywhere, and it just doesn't make sense logistically, even from like airports and hotels, and I mean all the pieces of the logistics don't make sense in a COVID world. But
Mm.
maybe it's one of those things where it's like, hey, if you're tested, come on. I don't know.
Yeah, but even still, like from the time you get tested to the time you actually show up to toe the line, I don't know. A lot could happen in there.
Well, and I think ultras make so much more sense, right? Where it's like, hey, we can do things safely. Granted, we're not going to have the tub of peanut butter that everyone dips their same hands into. Like, we're going to make that one change, and then after that, we're just going to send people off in waves, and we'll be fine. It's like I feel like ultras can do it, whereas major marathons have a hard time, and maybe like major triathlons. Ironman has kind of has a plan of basically like sending people off in waves and really spreading out transition areas. Ironman does have a plan. I think, obviously less people do Ironman than something like a Boston Marathon, but they are still big events. And so,
Yeah.
ultras, yes. Ironman, depending on the location, like everything goes in Florida. So sure, but probably not, other locations, California, for example, who knows?
Yeah, I mean, even ultras though, some of the bigger ones, Western states comes to mind, and even Vermont 100 up here in the Northeast. There's a lot of people there, and
yeah, I was watching Ryan Clayton's one of his, like, how you start watching a video of someone's and then you just get looped into like all of their content. I just like went down a rabbit hole on his channel, and it was like I was watching like it wasn't Western states, it was Leadville, I think. And it was just like all these people packed in an auditorium, and they were talking about like, yes, I will finish this race. Like, don't give up. And I was just thinking to myself, like, they're all like close proximity yelling and stuff like that. And I'm like, man, that can't happen.
I know. And that's the worst part, because that's kind of like what ultras are all about. Without that close contact and people cheering you on, and the crew and aid station people like clapping for you and filling up your water bottles and hugging you, like it's going to be it's going to be weird for a while, I think.
And you're signed up for a couple races, right?
Yeah, I've got 2 on my calendar, Vermont 100, or 3, Eastern States, Vermont 100, and Mid-State Massive. I got deferred because I was injured last year. So I don't know.
When are you going to come out west?
Yeah, I want to. During this time, when the vaccines become more available, I think I'll be doing some more traveling. I definitely want to branch out and do some like West Coast races, or even just like, fly around and like, I want to do part of the Wanderlust Trail out there, like around Rainier. That looks beautiful. I just haven't gotten around. Haven't seen enough of the world.
When you do start to travel, and I'm just like, this is projecting way out, right? Like, why not, right? But like, when you do travel, do you think that you'll like do meetups with people that watch your channel at all, or?
That would be awesome. I still feels weird to think like people would want to meet up with me, but
I would want to meet up with you.
Yeah, man, we should. Yeah. I keep talking to Ryan, like it'd be awesome to come up with like a way to collaborate with, you and Ryan, or like something. I don't know. I feel like we could come up with something really creative. It'd be awesome. So much fun. Be a lot of fun. But again, there's a pandemic. So it makes that a lot more challenging.
But it also gives us time, right? It gives us that little bit of time to be like, hey, we can plan stuff. Like, I know I kind of like chat with Mike Kofuzi. Kofuzi was on your channel. He did one of these interviews with you. Michael Ko, he is talking about this, like, because he's been locked in the pandemic, and it's like he wants to do this like road trip when it's all over, and he's just going to go everywhere. And so I'm excited for him to do it. I mean, I'm sure I'll see him a couple places, but it's just neat to think like he has enough of a following that he can go do some fun stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be awesome. I would love to see. I honestly, it would be great if like Kafuzi Mike did like the Boston Marathon or something because I'm
Yep.
right here. I could
Well,
like
and
shoot down
he
there and check it
actually
out.
when actually we were planning on meeting up when he was going to do it for 2020, that didn't happen, of course. I was like, hey, my wife qualified, we're going, like I will film some stuff, like I'll, he was going to race and I was like, I'll get some film for you,
Oh, that
because
would be
I'm going to
awesome.
be out there with camera stuff. So, and I love all the camera stuff, so
Yeah, yeah, preaching to the choir, man. I feel like I've gone
I know
down.
we have a problem.
Yeah,
We have a slight addiction, slight problem.
it's called gear acquisition syndrome.
Yes,
But
it
I
is.
can thank it for the start of my channel. I wouldn't have made Garmin videos if I wasn't so passionate about them and kept buying them.
Yep.
Let's see what else we got in the chat. We've got a few that we're missing. Oh, we got Mike in the chat. Kafuzi says, I agree. It's totally an Apple effect. People want to see something new every year. Yeah, I think he's talking about the Garmin conversation we just had.
Yeah. Yeah.
70. Mark Cole talking about his run every day challenge. 70-day streak here too, brother. It actually seems to be getting easier every day. Yeah, I agree. At first it was kind of a struggle for me because I wasn't used to running every day. It was like I used to like have easy days and hard days and long days. But it certainly got a lot easier now that I've kind of committed to it. And now, worst case, 3 miles on a treadmill. Best case, it's like a long run outside somewhere. But it definitely gets easier. So if anyone's thinking about trying it, definitely give it a shot.
I've done if for your viewers that don't know me, like I have a long running history. I ran in college. That was my big thing, was running. And so I have a whole bunch of years that I didn't miss any running at all, like didn't miss a day. And for a couple of years, I like ran a lot of miles. But I have a hard time talking to people, because they'll say like, oh, you need to have a day off, and you kind of get it. You're like, yes, that makes a lot of sense. That's probably the wise thing to do. But there's something about just having that, like, I'm going to run every day. There's no question about should I run today, and you're
Yeah.
just going to go out the door, and if it gets to be 7 o'clock at night, you're like, I'm still going to go run. I have to get my run in. Doesn't have to be long or whatever it is, but like, I think that there's some real value to that I think is kind of overlooked. Yes, you need, the body needs to rest, but you can still rest and run a certain amount of mileage. So
Yeah. Yeah. And I think up front, like at the beginning, I learned pretty quickly that every day is not going to be a 6-minute pace long
Right.
run, right? Like
Yeah.
some days it's 1.5 miles, 2 miles, but it still checks the box that I got my heart rate level up and I pounded my joints a little bit. And, I feel like I feel less likely to be injured. It sounds counterintuitive, like I should feel like a higher sense of being injured, but everything's just been kind of worked in a little bit where it's kind of, I don't know, like I'm not structuring a workout. I'm not doing sets. I'm not saying I have a goal pace or a distance. My whole thing right now is like, just get out there, see how far you get. And if you feel good that day, go long. If you feel like crap, turn around, and just see where it goes. And that's resulting in like 40 to 50 mile weeks, which feels pretty good right now. So, as long as I can
I'll
maintain
usually
that.
I coach a really large high school team. It's probably not going to be large this year. But in cross country season is normally in the fall, and we're doing it in the winter, which is weird. But like, so we'll usually have, somewhere between like 100, 125 runners. And, I'll talk to a lot of them, and they do have injuries and things. And I'll tell them like, go for 2 miles, see how you feel. And at that 2 mile point, then decide if you want to go for 7 miles, or if you really feel like not good, like bag it, like, and be smart, like bag it, like do it, like call it quits if you feel like, but there's something to be said for like going through that warm up process and seeing how you feel.
Yeah.
There's real value there for sure.
Yeah. And even like a rest day could be a 1 mile jog. It's not a run. I think people just take rest days too literal, like active rest. You can get out there and move a little bit.
Yeah. At the beginning of the year, I was doing that. I was doing like kind of running a little bit each day, and I would do a lot of these like little 1 mile runs just to kind of like get my body out there and stuff. And I really liked it, which was surprising. and you kind of start to think like, well, what do people think when they look on Strava and they see that little 1 mile run? And I just kind of have to like get over it, right? Where it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm injured a lot and this is what I'm doing, right? Like and I would say something like evening mile or morning mile or whatever it is. It's just like I'm going out in the dark and doing this little mile. And it was I really enjoyed it. I wish I could keep doing it, but such is life. Achilles.
So Achilles.
Such is life. Busted Achilles.
So the Strava thing I struggle with.
Yeah.
But what I do now is I don't put everything on Strava anymore. Like it's unfortunate because I don't really have a place that has everything. Like I've got all the Polar, Coros, Garmin, and I should be better at that. But 80% goes on Strava right now.
So here's what I would do. Training Peaks. Have you ever heard of that?
Yep.
So they have a free account. I would do that. And you can have it auto upload from Garmin.
I have that. The problem is like I go from Garmin to Coros to whatever. And I know there's ways to sync them like RunGap or whatever, but I just don't bother because it's better for my mental health.
Well, the other problem that you and I have is I'll be wearing 3 watches and I'll go for a run and I want to compare all this data and it's like, crap, all of that got uploaded to Strava and I got to go delete all this thing, or whatever. But for me, like what's on Strava, I think is accurate and I don't hide anything at all. So I post, everything there and I don't have, I feel like I just have to, if I go for a mile and I'm embarrassed that I ran 11 minutes and 30 seconds for a mile, like, guess what? Like, anyone wants to compare PRs, like, let's do it. But like, I have to get over the fact that I am where I am, and that happens to be not great at running right now, which I can live with that.
I think though, we put a lot of pressure on ourselves to be like, especially being like on YouTube and talking about fitness stuff. You're like, well, I better be in some kind of shape, right? But I think people actually like someone more relatable, someone injured. And I feel like they appreciate, I appreciate that when I see somebody and they're like, man, I jacked up my back. How am I going to make this better? I like that sort of honesty, that transparency. And who knows how many of the influencers out there are doing that. It's a weird niche we're in because it's based on physical capabilities. And if I got in a car accident, something terrible happened and I broke my leg, how the heck am I going to post videos about fitness tech and running gear? So it is a weird situation.
I feel you for sure. And honestly, when you had your back injury, it was the same kind of thing where it's like, how do I review a watch when I can't go out and run? And I do feel that pressure and I do things that I shouldn't because, I just posted a video, I think maybe my most recent video where I go and I do this track workout, which is the exact opposite of what I should be doing with my Achilles right now. And so my physical therapist is also a professional triathlete and also like best friend. Right. And so he saw that and he's like, oh my God, what are you doing? And it was because like another YouTube channel had like called out my channel and been like, hey, try this challenge or whatever. And I'm like, I'll do it, and then you're like, well, I could just jog through this 8-minute pace or whatever. And then of course I go harder than I should. But you do feel, I think, a lot of weird pressure being on YouTube, especially somewhat of a fitness channel or whatever. And I don't know what the answer is because you do need at least a certain amount of like minimal amount of fitness to be able to test a fitness watch. And I don't know. I think what could be like the minimum amount, like the mile or whatever that we talk about, I don't even know if that's enough to test some of the heart rate monitors because, a lot of times you're ramping up a lot of the accuracy and things like that as you're doing those. But at the same time, like at least with triathlon, I have the ability to be like, well, I can easily hop on the bike for an hour. If I got hit by a car, that would definitely be a different situation. I don't know.
Yeah, it depends. I guess it depends what part of you got hit by the car.
Yeah, well, I have quite a few friends that have been hit by cars when cycling. It's actually scary how common that happens.
Dude.
And
No,
One of my
that's, I mean,
buddies who's a, it's yeah. Go ahead.
I bought a road bike and I was like, I'm
Did
going to
you
use
really?
this as my side. Like I'm going to, get my cardio up on the road bike. I
Yeah.
was a mountain biker for a long time. I love mountain biking.
Yeah.
But then I was like, oh, I can't get to the trail all the time. So I'm going to get on the road.
Yep.
It took me 2 days of commuting to work where I was like, screw this. I live near Boston. People driving around here are totally insane. Not only that, but like
Yeah,
we've
and
got
I feel like the roads are more
potholes
narrow
and-
in Boston.
Oh yeah, yeah. Everything's just it's very chaotic on the roads here. So I sold it. I was like, nope, I'm done with this. No way. So the only cycling I
Well-
do now is on an indoor bike.
Yes, actually, that's great, and I do a lot of indoor cycling, especially right now. But I do love biking. I love biking outdoors. I usually have a couple of scares that every once in a while, and that really freaks me out. Or I have friends that get really badly hurt, or I have my own crashes. I don't know if you can see my shoulder, but it's basically disfigured because of a bike crash that I had. But like you have these situations where you're like, screw that. I need to be able to like pick up my kids, and I need to be able to, do these things that are important. But at the same time, like biking is fantastic. It's great. It's a great sport. You can get out there and you can go 2-3 hours and not be that sore the next day, which you can never do with running. So it has its benefits for sure. It's just, man, running is so much more time efficient, right? Throw the shoes on, go out the door, and get back to work.
Yeah, that was the whole thing with mountain biking was I remember like in the morning I'd have to get the bike on the roof and then I'd have to remember to put my shoes, my clipless pedal shoes in the back seat and all my gear, the helmet and everything. Whereas with running, it's like keep your shoes in your car. You got a basic
I'll be
minimal
done
kit.
by the time you're ready to get ready for biking or whatever.
Exactly. So like lunchtime runs at work or, after work, it's a lot more, I don't know, it's more minimalistic, takes less tweaking. That's what I like about it.
And you
we
have 3 boys and I have 3 boys, and it's like,
Oh yeah.
time management is a serious problem. Like it
Oh
is
yeah.
a real issue,
Yeah, man.
and it's only going to get worse.
It's the hardest part. I don't know. Like the value of time right now is just, it's there. You can't even I couldn't put a monetary value on it. And, I love my kids. I love my family, but like, between real job and then like doing my fake job over here at the YouTube thing, it's crazy. I'm sure you feel it too.
I'm feeling like today I felt like I let down about 5 to 10 people, like a lot of people just disappointed with me because I didn't have time for them or whatever. So that's tough.
We got Oscar Farias. He says, I was 270 pounds and now I'm down to 197. And all I do is run.
Oscar.
All
Good
I do
job,
is run 4 to 6 miles a day on the treadmill. Thank you guys. That's awesome, Oscar. Congratulations on that.
Way to go. That's awesome.
Victor Ngan, Ngan. Nin. I'm going to go with Nan. Any preference on hydration packs or accessories? How do you feel on that?
What, the Solomon one, right? Is that the one that everyone wants? So I'm old school runner. Like, even if you're doing it's kind of like that. Like, hey, if you're doing 20 to 26 miles or something like that, you don't need hydration. Like sometimes you would go out, drive out the course before and throw some water bottles out. Like this is how we used to do stuff. And there were many times that I used to do this 17-mile loop on trails. And this is on trails in the summertime in Alabama. And I would have water at a water stop at 2 miles. And then I would do the rest of the 17-mile loop. And it was a hilly loop. And I would finish and I would be delirious without water. So we just didn't do it. And we never even thought like, oh, maybe you should bring a water pack or one of, nope, this is what we do. We just go run. So that was dumb.
I used to feel that way until I got rhabdomyolysis. Is that how you pronounce it? Yeah, I got rhabdo after the Vermont 100.
Muscle breakdown, right? Where it ends up being so much muscle breakdown that it's pretty dangerous to your liver and things like that. Yeah,
it's like super dehydration to the point where your muscle, like the proteins from your muscles ends up in your blood. And that happened. Well, I got super dehydrated at Vermont. And then a couple of weeks later tried to do this trail called the Waypack Trail. It's 25-mile trail run with like very limited water, and I only took like a liter with me. So I ran out halfway through, and by the end, I could actually like feel my liver. It was like really
Oh,
unnerving. Yeah, it was a whole thing. I like had tests, and yeah, I was in rough shape for a while. So ever since then, I take hydration a lot more seriously. But
right.
yeah,
So you
I think
went to the
for
hospital for that, right?
yeah, I had to
Yeah.
get all kinds of IVs and tests, and yeah,
Yes.
it took a while to recover. Even like a short run after that, would
Yeah.
take the wind out of my sail, and like it was really weird. But in terms of like hydration vests that I like the Solomon, like you said, the Solomon S Lab 5 Advanced Skin 5 set and 12 set. Those are my two
Okay.
favorites right now. Who else do we got in here? Let's see. What do you think about Apple Fitness? It's funny you ask. I was working on a video on that. Have you tried it yet, Matt?
No, no. I think it's like I feel like you keep getting these messages that it's like free for you because you got a new product. But I this is really ironic. So I write Apple software, so like iOS software, like Swift programming language or Objective C. Like that's what I do for my real job, as we talk about real jobs and fake jobs. But I don't have an Apple Watch. We had the first Apple Watch in the house, like my wife wore it for a little while and just gave it to someone. She didn't like it that much. She just like gave it to someone else because she didn't like it that much. And so I wouldn't mind checking out the Apple Fitness stuff. It looks good. It's gotten really good reviews. So I'll be on the edge of my seat whenever Chase the Summit video comes out with the Apple Fitness stuff.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like I'm not the right clientele for it. It's interesting, but it's
But your
basically
wife does stuff like that, right?
yeah. So I feel like I kind of showed it to her, but we also have
Okay.
a Nordic Track treadmill with the iFit stuff on it.
Yeah.
And that's very similar to what Apple's trying to do.
Right.
So, like, if you have iFit, I don't see why you'd get Apple Fitness, although
Yeah.
it does integrate a little bit cleaner with the whole
Yeah.
ecosystem, like the Apple thing. But yeah, the big show to it is basically like you'll see your heart rate from your Apple Watch on your iPhone or your iPad in real time. And it's kind of catered to you. So after a workout, if you do something hard, it'll like suggest the next hard workout.
That's cool.
And it has things like yoga and all that other stuff on there.
Yeah, that's probably what I should be doing like all the time. And my wife does a great job, and she uses the Peloton app, not for cycling, but for all of the different yoga stuff. And she loves it. And, I don't mind paying for stuff if like we're using it. It's like, I have no problem with that. And she uses the heck out of that stuff. So that's,
Do you
that's
do you
good.
have do you have to have the Peloton bike or tread to use the Peloton app?
No, you don't. Well, so if you want to, so it doesn't make sense to use the Peloton app for cycling stuff if you don't have the bike, or same thing for the treadmill. But they have a ton of other stuff, which she likes, these HIIT workouts and yoga workouts. And that's what she's using the Peloton app for. And
Huh.
she really uses it a lot. So
That's cool. Yeah, I'd like to.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll try that because it
Yeah,
might be
you
a good data point for comparing it to Apple Fitness because it's kind of
I think it
kind of
would.
the same thing.
Yeah, because it's one of the major players on the market. And I'm sure they have a free trial that you could, try it out and see what you think.
Yeah. Shane, is it an Apple effect or watch brands trying to do the same things as the shoe companies do with their new versions every year? I feel like it's just a global thing where like we expect a new MacBook Pro every year and we expect a new TV to come out from Samsung every year and a new technology from Sony cameras to come out. It's just like our culture now is like instant gratification, I think.
Yeah. Shane, I think you're right. I think that there's some pressure from, and I do think it's coming from Apple somewhat. I think that, really the features that we're going to see from Garmin in the future, they feel like an effect from Apple, right? Where it's like,
Yeah.
we got the basic stuff like notifications on your, watch and all that stuff. And now it's like, now you can do music on your phone, on your watch. And now the next thing is like, and maybe we could talk through your watch. It's like, we're going to start to feel, Garmin is feeling the pressure. I think Garmin's really feeling the heat, not from, Polar and Coros and Suunto, but they're feeling the pressure from Apple, right? Like that's the big fear.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's probably the only area where Apple is a value.
Yeah,
compared to like when you look at the Apple computers, they're very expensive compared to the competition in the Windows
sure.
market. And when you look at like Apple earbuds, they're crazy expensive for what you're getting.
Oh,
But when you look at the
what about
Apple
their like?
Watch,
What about their can ones? The Air,
uh,
I don't remember. The something Max or whatever
yeah,
they're called. They're like
the EarPod Max,
$1,000.
yeah.
Yeah,
But then you look at the Apple Watch, and like the Apple Watch SE is 279, and it's pretty awesome for 279. Like I
yeah.
put that right up there with the Chronos Pace 2 being a good deal because
Oh yeah.
you're getting
No, I
you get a
actually
lot
agree
of
with that.
flexibility there. It's really
Yeah,
weird.
it does a whole bunch of stuff. You got access to a ridiculous amount of software that you can install. And that's another thing that I mention occasionally, but like really probably not enough, is that third-party software is so critical that it's like Garmin has their Connect IQ apps where you can, if there's something that your watch doesn't do, you just and you're smart enough, you figured this stuff out, you can go develop your own little thing, throw it on your watch, and there you go. But Apple like take that to the max where it's like thousands of developers are putting their work towards these Apple watches. Well, you're gonna have some really cool apps and things like that. All of these companies like Polar and Koros and Sunto, they're all missing out on that piece, and it's something that they've I would say that they've overlooked it, maybe not, because it is hard to support all of that stuff, but like
Yeah.
it's important, right? Like Apple is always going to have that advantage of having this massive developer base. I mean, this goes back to like Windows versus Apple, where like all the developers started developing towards Windows. Like, why would you worry about Apple? There's just a small segment of the people buying computers and operating systems. So it's like, focus your development efforts on Windows. And, then all of a sudden all the software's for Windows. So why would you buy an Apple? It's kind of like a pattern that just kind of builds on itself. So I think it's something that at least Garmin has started. I have issues with the Connect IQ stuff, but
Yeah. Yeah,
it's
there's like a very low standard, I feel like, for
there's a couple things like the programming language they chose was Monkey IQ or something, which is kind of like Java, but it's just like, why not just stick with something that's just a standard? And yeah, so there's a lot of problems that way. And I get it. Like they needed to kind of lock in some things, but Apple, it's like, hey, if you know how to program towards your MacBook Pro, then you could also program towards the watch. Like a lot of people are gonna be like, okay, that makes sense. I can do that. So it's not some obscure language. And Android Wear, same kind of thing, right? It's like you're going to have access to a whole bunch of applications. And, we should probably talk about that more when we, do these watch reviews. It's like Koros is never going to have that, thousands upon thousands of developers developing towards their platform.
I think that's something they pride themselves on, though. Like they're never gonna do music. They're never gonna have like fancy pants things going on. Koros is all about like rock solid, reliable baseline of features, and nothing over the top, nothing extravagant, because I feel like they're marketing towards people who just don't want too much fluff, right? And that's like if you look at a Garmin and you're like, why the heck would I want music on my running watch? Well, you probably just buy a Koros.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I mean, how many, like you and I both like Garmin, like we both use these watches. Like how many times have you listened to music on your watch, like from your watch?
Maybe in the realm of 15 times.
15
total.
times, and you've probably had that ability for 2 years, I'm guessing, about.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm probably less than you. I'm probably like less than 5 times. So it's great. It's a cool feature. I've never successfully used the Garmin Pay feature. Never.
Oh, I use that all the time, actually. Now more than ever with the pandemic. It doesn't
work with my bank, or it didn't last time I checked. And so I'm like, well, can't even test this.
It's actually surprisingly cool. Like if you're grocery shopping or something and you just go blink and then you're done. You don't have to dig out your credit card or anything. So I kind of like that feature. Cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it is kind of unfortunate that they only support, like I have Bank of America. So,
you're good.
That works by default. But if you have like a smaller credit union or something like that, it's definitely not as easy. Matt, we got a question for you. Use your software magic skills and create the ultimate swim app for Garmin, please. Can you get
Oh,
on
I
that?
would love to. Well, again, like Monkey IQ, is not something that I really want to dive into. But I would if it was like, hey, I need something. But what it allows you to do is so there's a product that I really want to test. Like there's all these kind of like aero meters, which is complicated in itself, just explaining what the product is, but they're ways to kind of determine how aerodynamic you are on the bike. But like they want to relay that information up to the bike computer, right? And so bike computer, you might have a Wahoo bike computer, or you might have a Garmin bike computer. Really, it's going to be one of those two. There are others, but like those are the two major ones. And so, if you're making these aerometers, which one do you choose? Do you choose the one that has, the Connect IQ platform where you can write your software and you can kind of get what you need from your aero sensor up and display it? Or do you do that for Wahoo where you literally can't do anything except for nothing? Like you're out of luck. And so there's real value to that. And so I see some situations where I'm like, hey, there's this hole in this piece and I want this information. Like I'll go develop it and do it myself. Right now, I'm at this point where it's like I have literally no time even to do my job that pays me. It's like I don't, like, and then I struggled to get my one video out per week, and so it's like I'm not going to pick up. Not that I couldn't pick up a different programming language. Wouldn't be that hard. It's just like I don't know that the value would be there for me, and if it was something like, hey, we're gonna pay you to do it, then I would consider it. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, Garmin Swim stuff is, I think, solid. It does what needs to be done for sure. So I don't see okay. So what I would want to see on swimming, and here's my like what I wish. Here's my wish feature.
Yeah.
Would be a learning algorithm for like detecting what stroke you're doing. Because when we talk about like when you think about swimming, you think like, why would Matt go do anything except for go do freestyle, right? But like if you think about real swimmers, like what they do is they'll go to the pool, they'll do some kicking, and then they do a fly set where they're doing butterfly, and then they're going to do some breaststroke stuff, and then they're going to do backstroke, and they're going to do freestyle. And I do like very little of that because I'm very much a triathlete and I'm absolutely horrible at all the other strokes, but I swim with real swimmers. And so I get roped into doing, other strokes. And so what you can do, and I've seen certain this is diving deep into the woods, but I've seen companies do this where you use a learning algorithm to kind of detect the accelerometer data and kind of detect which strokes you're doing. And then, you're automatically displaying all of that information in your final results. So you get your final data, you can imagine like your Garmin data or whatever it is. And you can kind of see like, okay, well, that 25 that I was doing fly, I did this time. And then the next one I was doing backstroke and I had hit this time. And so that is really cool data to have, especially if it's being auto detected and you don't have to like try and go change settings or something like that on your watch. But to do any sort of learning algorithm stuff, you really have to have a ton of data, which Garmin has, but I personally don't have it. And so I just don't swim enough, I guess. But do you guys like learning algorithms and things like that for your work stuff?
For my work stuff, I'm mechanical, so I just deal with nuts and bolts.
Right. You're like CAD, figure out how this
I do. Yeah, I do like 3D modeling and like bearing sizing and like structural analysis and all that.
Yeah.
That stuff that I lived 9 to 5.
Yeah, but I mean, if it's robotics, then there's going to be learning algorithms, right? So
yeah, it's a weird thing to be a part of. You see these automatic robots driving around and doing things, and yeah, it's very interesting. I could see
the way I look at it is, you're building Terminator, Skynet. You're part of Skynet. You're trying to kill us all. So yeah. I don't know if we should be supporting your channel.
Well, if you support my channel, maybe I won't have to work there anymore.
There you go.
Someday. Here's a good question. How do each of you want to see your channel grow in 2021 and then over the next 5 years? Wow. I can't even think past next week.
Sounds like forever.
Yeah. Let's hear your take on that.
Okay. So here's something that I would suggest for anyone that's new to YouTube. Like start now, because what you'll notice is that as you start, it's very, very difficult. It's just like you have this like slow growth, and you're thinking like, I am never gonna hit 100 subscribers, and you finally do, and then the next 100 is really not that hard to hit. And so it's a very like I would describe it as like, it feels very exponential as far as growth goes. And so, the sooner you start, the better. So if you're thinking about starting something, like, start it and then tell me about it, because I'll come watch your stuff and I'll come help you as best I can. But like, so you think like 5 years, and you're thinking like, okay, well, exponential growth. Like, I do hope right now, I think I'm over 5,000 subscribers. And it's kind of one of those things where it's like, okay, I hope that I'm faster than I have hit 5,000, that I'll hit 10,000. And so, you start to think, okay, well, hopefully eventually I'll get to, where Chase the Summit is. Because, and I think what's really cool is like celebrating those little milestones. And I do worry a little bit about like, you have these numbers and things like that, and that there are these metrics that you're like, oh, I need to hit the next milestone. Whereas, they're just numbers, and they're not necessarily as important as putting out like decent quality videos. And so, goals for the channel are, like, I do want to hit some decent numbers in the next year or so. And I do want to put out really quality, decent content in the near future. And I think that you can do both of those. You can put out like enough quantity that you'll see the growth, that you'll have decent numbers, as well as like have a couple of videos that you're really passionate about, even if they're not like big numbers. And so,
Yeah.
you and I have talked about this, offline, where it's like, there's some cool stuff where it's just like, I'm going to go take my camera and I'm going to go run. And,
Yeah.
5 people are going to watch this, but it's going to be a hell of a good video. And I think it's important to put that stuff out there. So,
Yeah, I agree. That's a really hard thing that I'm like right now struggling with.
Yeah.
Like back like a year ago, if a video got 1,000 views in a day, I would be like, holy crap, like this is amazing. But now like 1,000 views in a day isn't as good as it, it's not like a top, it's like below a top 10 performer.
Right.
And like, I try not to get hung up on that, because
you do.
YouTube's such a dangerous place, because you come into it with such pure intentions. You want to share your opinion, or you want to entertain or educate, or just try to, like inspire or whatever. But then as time goes on, when it becomes monetized, and then things are, you're getting paid a little bit here and there, it can really shift like how you look at it and what you're making. So I really try not to let that burden me too much. Like today I posted that, the insole review with the clicky insoles. And I kind of knew like it's a pretty niche product. I know a lot of people, and it, it's an hour to film. It's an hour to film. It's a couple hours to edit, all for like $2.71 that YouTube will pay me someday.
Well, you won't get paid for that, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And, but for the one person that watches that video and is like, I'm a heel striker and I really want to find a way to combat this, and if that helps that one person, that's worth it. Right. So you got to really weigh it out.
It's so easy to overlook the fact that like this one video might really, really help like that one person, and I think, you make you try really hard to like make what you want to make and make good videos, and let the other stuff, just let it go. Where it's hard, because like one of the videos that I have coming up, I already talked about, was like the Garmin 745 after 100 days or whatever. Like that video will do well because of what it is. Like it just, it will. Like I'm confident that'll end up in my top 20 videos or something like that.
I'll tell you right now, it's a banger
video, because like it'll help a lot of people. But at the same time, like there's another video that'll be on my list that's like, hey, what can you expect from your first triathlon? And that's going to help 5 people, but it'll help them a lot. And it's very important to me to like get those people, into the sport of triathlon. And so I think, the question was from Hunter, and he does CrossFit stuff. You guys can check out his channel. It's excellent. But like, he, he can do the same thing where it's like, can you help people get into the sport of CrossFit? How do you help them? How do you help them with these technology choices for the sport of CrossFit? And sometimes you kind of like do some reviews that are going to be like kind of big hits, and then you kind of mix that in with some other things that you think are really, really going to help people. And then there's other things too, where it's like, I'm going to make a video coming up where I talk about changing the watch band of the 745, which is actually a little bit awkward and weird, but it's
I've done it.
You've done it. Okay. So like, it's a weird little process. And it's one of those things where it's like that video will do, it won't do well, but it's like, it'll help some people, and it'll help some people 2 years from now. Because
I think you'll be surprised. I think that'll do well.
No, it won't.
I think it will, because I had a guy.
It'll be what I call like a slow burn video, where it'll do okay for a long time, but it won't do great ever.
I had a guy message me on Instagram, direct message, and he wanted to know if I could take the Coros Pace 2 nylon band and put it on the 745.
Oh yeah.
And so I actually tried it, and I took a picture for the guy, and I sent it to him. And you can do it. You can actually swap them around. And I thought to myself, hey, this would actually make kind of an interesting video, because I bet a lot of
that video, because then you should weigh the difference and be like, what lightest GPS watch?
Oh yeah, because the 745 is pretty light, actually.
745 is pretty light. Yeah, actually that would be nice. And the Coros Pace 2 is, I don't know. It, like, if you take off the bands, like, they're probably pretty close. I bet the 745 weighs a little bit more, because the heart rate has that pulse ox stuff. It has that like dome to it. I don't know. That'd be interesting. You should make that video. I would love to watch that video.
Maybe I'll make one of those short videos that people are doing nowadays, and it will be just about that.
Yeah, shorts. I don't know. I'm gonna have to try it. I just don't want to muddy up my analytics on my videos.
Yeah, but that was a good point, Matt. Check out Fit Gear Hunter's channel if you haven't already. He does CrossFit oriented reviews. So he looks at like the Garmin's and the Coroses, and purely from the perspective of someone just doing CrossFit. So that's pretty cool niche that he's in there.
Yeah, he does a good job. He does pretty thorough reviews.
We got Dr. 4 Aces in the house. Hello from Japan. Nice. I can't stay for the live chat, but rest assured I'll be back to replay it later. Awesome. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Goku Runner 44-day streak. That's awesome. Congratulations.
Goku Runner's cool. He's done some crazy stuff. He's done some like 24-hour. He has a YouTube channel as well, you guys can check out. But he's done some like 24-hour track runs and stuff like that. Like, cool guy for sure. And he does review some products as well. But he mostly focuses on running stuff.
That's awesome. Fit Gear Hunter's back again. What do you think about the Garmin badge? 80 hours of running in a month. I didn't know that existed. But I feel like it's not that hard. Well, it's hard to achieve, but for a lot of people, like 100-mile training, probably hitting that. Wait, no, that's a lot. That's a real lot.
Yeah, that's a fair amount.
I don't think I've ever hit that.
It's a tough month. Like, I feel like you could hold that rhythm for a week, but then it gets a little bit more difficult after that. I mean, I probably did it back in the day when I was younger. But I
was listening to a podcast the other day about Taggart Van Etten, I want to say his name is. He's the American speed record holder, I think, for the 100-mile distance.
Okay.
I think he set some sort of record, but he was talking about his training plan, and he was doing 220 miles a week for like a sustained period of time. It's totally crazy.
Yeah, that's really hard. I know that there's a whole bunch of runners that used to do high mileage back in the day, and in particular, like there's some Japanese runners that really pushed that kind of limit of like, what can you do? And then what was really interesting is they did like, studies on all this stuff, like when does it quit paying dividends, and when does it start being negative, and all this stuff. And Arthur Lynyard was this famous running coach back in the day, and he said, like, right around that 200-mile mark, it gets really hard to do anything else. And they even looked at when does sperm count drop? And it doesn't. It ends up dropping Yeah, which is right. Like that's a weird thing to think, but it ends up dropping right around, that kind of 200-mile mark, which means, if you're hitting 120-mile weeks, like, don't worry, you're good. Keep going.
Yeah.
Your boys are still swimming.
Yeah. I feel like, there's definitely a point of diminishing returns there
Yeah.
where,
Yeah. Well,
I don't know,
so
if you're cranking out 100 miles a week.
I used to have this discussion a lot when I did high mileage, and people were like, you're doing 100-mile weeks and you're not getting anything from it. And I'm like, okay, well, we're racing a 10K in the NCAA championships, and like, you could be 10 seconds slower, and that could be 30 places or 40 places of people, right? Like, it's like, this is just like a massive amount of people that can all run sub 5 minutes for an entire, for 10K, right? And it's like, there's so many of us that can do this, and I'm in the back of the pack. So that's like the thick part of it, where it's like, I'm not towards the front where like where the fast people were. I'm in the back where it's like, hey, 10 seconds makes a huge difference between, the amount of points that you're scoring for your team. And so it's like, yeah, you have diminishing returns, but it might be 10 seconds over 10K, which might be a lot of points for your team. And for me, like, high mileage worked, and I got a lot of flack over the years about like how your knees are going to be bad and all this stuff. Right. And it's like, and all I could say is like, hey, this works for me. I get it. Like, if you're, 35 years old, like, don't try and go do 100-mile weeks or whatever. Like, I get it. But like, at the same time, if you've been doing 90-mile weeks for a long time, then jumping up to 100-mile weeks maybe isn't that big of a deal. So it's all in, I think, how you attack the problem, and don't ever just say like, this is wrong because it's, 3 digits versus 2 digits. Like, that just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. It really comes down to the person and like, obviously their run efficiency and, how they move. Some people can run and not get injured, and, others run 20 miles a week and end up with a jacked up back like I did.
Yeah. Right. Like, if I look at my running shoes, I get injured. So
Marty Logan says, hi, Dave. With running most days, do you always stretch beforehand? I keep getting calf soleus strains. Currently wear Pegasus Trail 2, which are awesome, by the way. So I'm a terrible example of someone who should stretch. I don't stretch at all, like zero. What I do is I start very slow in a warm up. And then after, I'll hit myself with a massage gun if I'm like tight in any areas, but I don't do any static, like Achilles or calves or anything like that. I
think what you'll find if you look into the research is that there's not a lot of good research for static stretching. Unfortunately, like, all of us do it, like, it feels good, especially after we work out, but there's just not a ton of data supporting it. Which is crazy weird, because like, all of us were taught like, stretch so that you don't get injured, but there's just like no studies that show that at all. In fact, usually the most successful runners are fairly tight. That being said, like, stretch after you run, especially, like, it just seems like the right thing to do. I don't know, but I would say what you're doing, Dave, is probably the right thing. Like, go warm up slowly. That calf soleus issue is a common thing that a lot of us deal with. You need to let it recover for sure. You probably have some micro tears in there. But then after that, like, starting up slowly, I think the massage gun is good as well. I think that's a good thing to try.
You got to use it right though. Like, I feel like a lot of people buy them and then they like hit their tendon directly, or, get into a spot where, it's just, you can do some damage if you don't target the right areas. It's a muscle
Major
tool.
muscle groups.
Yeah, that's it. Hit the meat of your calf.
Supposed to put it in your nose, right?
Oh man. So Jesse McIntyre says, do you think the Garmin Venue will eventually cannibalize the Vivo Active series? Wow. I hadn't thought about that, but it's definitely a potential, because it's kind of the same thing, but with a nice screen. If they could get the battery life up on it, it would certainly be like, if they could match the battery life, I don't see why they'd keep both lines active when most people want that bright OLED display. I don't know. We are getting close to an hour and a half here. I'm not going to keep you all night, Matt. Let's take a couple more chats.
I lose track of time so fast. I knew that was going to happen. I was like, oh yeah, we'll just go an hour. And then it was like, you and I start talking, it's going to be forever.
Yeah, I feel like, someone like you, we could be offline right now and just chatting.
Totally.
But
It's the exact same conversation, but it's good to do it on air for sure.
it would probably have a lot more camera talk involved.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Hey guys,
You're going to
any
buy
thought?
the Sony A1, right? When are you going
Oh
to buy that?
man. Oh, what's keeping me from buying it? Do you follow Chris what's his last name? Hau Hau or
Yeah.
Hua?
Yes, I think I follow him.
He
He's
posted
the guy from Toronto, right?
yeah, he posted the best Sony A1 video today.
Did he? Okay.
Where he kind of took the camera conspiracy spin, and he's in a boardroom meeting with the manager and the engineer, and
love it.
he's like just give him everything, and then the manager's like, what's the price? Double it.
Double it.
It's like
Yeah.
perfect. But they didn't put the flippy screen in, which I need the flippy screen. So
I don't think you need to buy another camera. I think you're good.
I think I'm good too. I think you're good too. You got one too, with the A7S.
Let's make Ryan buy that camera so that we can vicariously live through him.
He wants a cinema camera. That guy. I know.
idea.
Okay. Let's see. Victor Nan again agreed to the audience that resonates with YouTubers going through the same struggles and experience. Great job, guys. Oh, that's good to hear. Thank you for
thank
chiming
you.
in. Okay. Leona Wong. Well said, Dave. We love the transparency. Best way to learn and support each other. Yeah, totally true. If you get injured, you should certainly share it with your audience. And we all know Matt is cutting the heel off of his shoe right now so he can go run.
Right now, I'm like just sawing away, like while I'm talking on this video, I'm just cutting some shoe in half. My physical therapist, he was like, we need to cut up some more shoes. These are too old. I'm like, okay, I've got a whole bunch of shoes to cut up.
You got to come up with like a custom shoe where you got your shoe and then like a neoprene stretchy thing that goes around the back. That kind of like hugs.
Nike.
Kind of a random question. I've been searching high and low. Are there any good spin bikes that you know of that play nice with Garmin and auto adjust resistance based off the Garmin heart rate? I know nothing about that.
I don't know. Okay, so I haven't heard of anything that auto adjusts resistance based on heart rate. There are a lot of things that will auto adjust based on power. So typically what you'll do is like, so, you've talked about running power on your show for, I don't know, a year or more, but running, power really comes from biking. That's kind of where it stems from. And that's the amount of force that you're putting through the bike, amount of wattage that you're putting through the pedal itself and things like that. But there's a fair amount of bikes on the market that will adjust your workout, how fast you turn the pedals. They'll slow the pedals down, trying to make you push a certain amount of power. And they do that basically by like ramping up the resistance, trying to force you to kind of push a certain amount of power. They don't necessarily do it based on heart rate, or as far as I know, I haven't seen anything that's done that based on heart rate. So there are a fair amount of bikes on the market, like Wahoo has a spin bike, and I'm trying to think of who else. There's the Stages bike. There are a couple more, and they do that. They'll have this resistance. Wahoo also has like the Wahoo Kicker. There's the Trax Neo. There's all these different like smart trainers that do the same thing, where they'll add resistance to the actual rear mechanics of your bike, to where like you have to put out more power to try to match whatever your goal power is for the workout. So your workout has this thing where it's like go up and then take a break and then go up again. Then it'll try to force you through the workout in what they would call erg mode. But I haven't seen it based on heart rate. So if I see something, I will reach out and highlight it on my channel.
Here's a good question. Jody says, how did you both overcome the fear of people watching your videos and the imposter syndrome? I've got a story for that, but I'll let you go first.
So I think that's hard because I think at least at first, like you're going to post a video, you're going to hate the way that you sound. And that's never going to change, really. Like, you're like, gosh, my voice is so annoying. And here's my suggestion for you. Like, either decide that it's not worth it to post something, or like decide that it is worth it. And I think what you're going to decide is that it's worth posting something. Like I think that you have something very important to say, and you have an opinion and a perspective that I don't have, and that I promise I will find interesting, and that you should post that. And so the value of you posting that and the value of you providing that information to other people is worth it for you to get over that hump of like, my voice is annoying, or I'm going to say something stupid, or whatever it is. Like, I promise it's worth it. And then you need to do it 100 times and it'll get easier.
Yeah, totally agree. I think the biggest hurdle for me was starting so late in life, like,
Yeah.
mid-30s guy. I got kids. I work in a very professional environment in mechanical engineering. It was embarrassing, basically. And I was fortunate that I had a lot of the camera gear early on from like for photography hobby that I was into.
Yeah.
So a lot of my first videos, I didn't even tell my wife I posted them.
Right.
I just literally like under the radar, set up some lights, made my video, put them quietly on YouTube. And then it kind of went from there. So I agree. Like,
but I think that's okay. I mean, I really don't like the term YouTuber. Have you ever?
I hate it.
Like,
I hate it.
it really bothers me. And I think it sounds unprofessional. And then here's the other problem with it is like, I don't know if I have like a respectable career, right? But like I have some job that I have that's a real job. And, and it's and you and I, even when we describe YouTube, it's like, well, this is we have a real job, and then we have our other thing that we do. But like, I hate the YouTuber thing. And I don't ever describe myself that way.
What's worse is the word influencer. I absolutely can't. That's like you're influencing. It's almost like a drug, like a drug addiction. You're influencing someone to buy this thing. Yeah, exactly. I hate that. Yeah. I really hate that.
Like, oh yeah, I'm going to drug someone and take advantage of them. I'm going to influence them.
And that's, And, we have, there is that power that you are, if you took money and you posted a review in a positive way, that's about something that's should be a negative way. Like I see that happening on YouTube. It potentially could happen, but I pride myself in not doing that. I know you're not that way. And I know Hunter and Ryan in the chat are definitely not that way. So it's a really weird thing, but the imposter syndrome up front for me was huge because I'm an introverted guy. Like I don't do this stuff. I'm live on YouTube with 40 some odd people watching, and that's like totally uncomfortable for me. But day by day, the more you do it, the more natural it feels. Exactly. But editing my stupid face for 2 hours is definitely a pain every time. Yeah. Staring at yourself, fumbling. Thanks for your question, Jody. Okay, let's jump down. There's a lot of chat.
Sorry if we don't get to all of the questions, guys.
Yeah, no, thanks for joining, everybody. I really appreciate it.
But they are great questions. I really like so far. I like all the questions that we've had so far.
Yeah, good mix. We've had sports, running, triathlon. Yeah. We've had some YouTube questions. It's a good mix. I'm late. Daily Runner here from San Bernardino, California. Bernardino. There we go. Hi from South Africa. That's awesome. Have you guys experienced instant pace issues with the Garmin 945? Mine is way out compared to my Coros and Polar. Lots of guys online have the same issues. I don't feel like mine's way out of whack, but it kind of, I don't know. It's not like, I think they filter it a little bit, so it's not like jittery. So you kind of get a consistent number and it's not kind of all over the place. How do you feel about that, Matt?
So here's the problem is like, I feel like the numbers that I'm looking for oftentimes I'll be trying to like look at heart rate to see if those numbers are out of whack, and I don't stress about pace being out of whack. And so it may be one of those things that I just haven't noticed. But I will, now that it's on my radar, I'll look for that. Again, like I do go out running and I wear 3 watches. So Um, the 745 has been my rock solid kind of like, this is what I think is correct, and it looks that way. So I'll look for that in the future. It's not something that I've noticed. And honestly, a lot of times when I'm out running, I'm like, oh, look at the lake over there. Um, I'm like, oh yeah, wait, double check the heart rate is looking okay, and I have to like focus back on what I'm supposed to be, looking at. But, the spot that you probably would see that the most would be when you're doing speed work or track work or something like that, where you do have these rapid changes in acceleration and speed, and you're looking at your paces that way. So
Yeah.
not something that I've seen so far.
I think it comes down to like how they filter it. They just really want to like average it out a little bit, so you're not seeing numbers kind of spiking all over the place.
Right. So yeah, they'll do like a 5-second smoothing of that data or whatever it is. So, and they may adjust that, right? Like one company might pick 5 seconds, another company might pick 2 seconds, another company might pick 10 seconds. I know they do that with power data a lot, and you can actually see that when you overlay these graphs. You can see like one is really like choppy, and another one has these smooth curves. So
yeah. Cody Jackson, hi from Seattle. Hey, one of your neighbors up there.
Yeah.
I'm training for my first Ultra 50K in either March or April. Due to COVID, the restrictions on aid stations will probably be limited. Any tips for preparing enough food for the race? I would say make sure you practice like long runs with kind of maybe a cooler in your car and do like big loops or something like that. I think a lot of ultras coming up will have very limited crew points or no crew and maybe no volunteered aid station. So it might be like, it's drop bags for everything, or it's going to be like laid out prepackaged stuff. So I would say just do a lot of practice beforehand to get your head around what kind of nutrition you need and like at what mile markers you're going to need them by. If anything to share on that, Matt?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say is like, hey, practice what you want to work with, because what you're going to find is like, yeah, it's a negative that you don't have all of the crew and you don't have all of these aid stations and things like that. But the other side of the coin is the fact that like, hey, you can probably race with what you practice with a little bit more. And then you're going to know what's going to work well for your gut and what's not going to make you, oh, I took this thing at this aid station. It's brand new. I've never had it before. And guess what? I'm thrown up in the woods 5 minutes later.
Yeah, that's a bold move.
Likelihood of that happening, right? And so, like Dave said, like practice with what you're going to race with. So that will be helpful.
Okay, a couple more, and then I swear I'll let you go, Matt. Keeping you all night here.
I've got beer and I'm good.
Ryan Clayton says, fine, I'll get an A1 for quote unquote research. Perfect. We talked him into it.
Thanks, Ryan.
The Surly Trail Goat. What is the one thing in the gear that you use that you could not live without? What is one piece of gear, Matt, that you couldn't leave your house without?
Okay, I have, I could probably go on for days on this question. Great question, first of all. And so my guess based upon your username is that you're a runner, ultra runner, but I have a cycling item that I don't know if it's on the bike behind me. It's not, but there's a bike radar that is from Garmin. And it's just called their Varia radar. And basically what it does is it will detect traffic. So it's constantly detecting like any sort of fast moving objects behind you. And so it will kind of give you a display right on your either computer, or they also have another display that's specific for the radar. I just use my bike computer, and it will show you like not only that there's some traffic moving up behind you quickly, but it'll tell you like how many cars are there. So you don't like slide back into traffic after the first car passes and then get hit by the second or third car. And so
that's awesome.
That piece of equipment is like never talked about by Garmin. It's not very popular. It's not talked about by a lot of people. And I'm just like, this thing is gold. And I literally do not leave the house without it when I go biking. And I just want more people to have it, because I don't want, I'm looking for, hey, how can we keep more people watching my videos? Well, we got to keep these people alive, I guess. So every year I do a video talking about like stocking stuffer ideas for, the cyclist in your life or whatever. That will always be in there. Here's a spoiler for you. The 2021, Christmas gift list. Like, I promise that's going to be in there. Like, hate to spoil it for you, but you should watch it anyway. But yeah, so that's a product for sure. I should think of something running wise. Running wise, I will just say, like, there's some really good like flip belt kind of things where it's like, hey, just being able to have something really easy like that to just throw your phone in, and something like that really easy that works well, I think is a nice thing to have that I tend to use pretty regularly. And then, watches. I'm a very minimalist runner. Like, back in the day, I got very fast without even having a watch, right? Like, crazy things. Yeah. And we didn't have cell phones back then either. Like, it's just like crazy things can happen when you just go run. And for that, it's just a pair of shoes. So,
yeah. I think if I had to pick one item, I would go with the handheld water bottle. That would be my choice, because I love the
great
freedom. I don't like the vest. If I'm going on anything up to 12, 15 miles, I can pull it off with a simple handheld, even in like the heat of July. So that's my go-to. I actually have a video called "The First Item You Should Buy as a Trail Runner," and it's all about the handheld.
When I was a decent runner back in the day, I had all these ultra runner friends, and they were like, once you get used to having the water bottle like slipped onto your hand, it's like you feel naked without it. And I'm like, I don't know if I can do that. But
until you trip and fall and have the water balloon crash where it just blows up, the bottle just explodes in your face.
That sounds better than catching a whole bunch of gravel on your hands.
It's true. It's true. But it is a spectacular muddy fall when you land in the dirt and it just blows up in your face. Okay, final question. I feel like this is a good one because we both have them. Do you guys still use the Nerve insoles?
Okay, I'll take the first round on this one. So the Nerve insoles didn't really work for me personally, and because I'm the only person that has had issues with this, but like the side of my foot had some irritation with the piece that slipped on there, and it's only because I have a very pronounced I can't remember the name of the tendon that goes from the heel down, but it's something that was slightly irritating, and I couldn't quite get it fixed enough. And so what I did was, my best friend, who's the physical therapist, who's the pro triathlete physical therapist, who I've had on the channel once or twice, he actually, what I did was I was like, hey, use these. You can use these with your patients. It's exactly what you do. You do a lot of these, like, running fits, running economy kind of examinations and things like that. Like, this is a perfect tool for you. And I really think Nerve should be looking at physical therapists and saying, like, hey, this tool that we have is perfect for what you guys are doing. The other piece is like, well, a lot of people use different shoes all the time, and switching insoles is a pain. But yeah, no, I don't use the Nerve insoles. When I interview products, I always try to be somewhat positive, thinking of like all the engineering and all the people that put a lot of work into these products. But I hope that I made it clear that like that product wasn't something that I would have purchased and that I would suggest people purchase. So I think it's cool. I just don't think it's something that I would use every day. And if you're thinking about making that purchase, I would say you might not need to have it. It's a kind of nice to have, but maybe not a need to have.
Yeah, that was a tough one for me because, like you said, I really appreciate. It seemed like the team involved with that product was very passionate, and I had a couple of phone calls, Skype calls with them, and they were very excited about the potential and the use cases and all that. But then I dug into it and I was like, you've got the perfect platform here to talk about running power, right? Because you've got load cells under your foot. You could literally gauge how much pressure is being applied by certain points of your foot and like come up with an algorithm for a really accurate power like correlation there.
So those little individual pressure points, there's like a dozen on each foot. They don't actually give you power because they're not really pressure plates. They're more like sensors of like,
they're just like contacts.
Right. So you're not going to get like, so what you really need is like, you need like a strain gauge basically of like, so you probably engineering, right? Like, I don't know if you guys did strain gauges or something like that at some point during, I don't know if that's something that you guys use now or whatever, but like that's the correct way to do power measurement. And that is not what's built into these insoles.
But
However,
the weird thing though is you do get
right.
like your pronation and your how neutral you are and all that
Yes.
information. So they're definitely taking some data from those sensors to come up with that.
Right. So the interesting thing about that is like, and I had this discussion with them, and they were like, "What is missing from our product?" And I was like, "You have to do running power." And
Yeah.
and I said like, "Hey, it doesn't have." And you could see like the disappointment in their face, and it's basically this whole concept. And I've talked about this very early on when I first started making videos on YouTube of running power with the Stride Pod. These are estimations of power. They are not strain gauges. They are not real power. They're looking at the accelerometer data and they're estimating power based on math, right? And it's like it doesn't mean that it's not a good like it does just because they're estimations or anything doesn't mean that it's not of value. Like they're great. You can help pace yourself. You can look at like hills, totally different. They're very valuable. It's valuable information, but it's not real power. It's just like, hey, we think you're going up a hill. We think you're gonna, roughly this amount of effort, this pace. Okay, we're gonna go with this power. Like the algorithm figures this out. But they did not. So I talked to Nerve about this, and they were like, we cannot bring ourselves to call something power unless it's really power.
Yeah, that's the answer I got too. Yeah, that's the same answer I got. They actually outright said like how. We don't know how Stride is pulling that off. We don't know how, Coros is pulling that off. When it's not like it's not objective information. Yeah.
Right. It's a made up number. Yeah. And so, and the problem is running power is a real number and they're calling something else running power and it's not real. So they were not able to get over that hurdle. However, I will say that, the smart thing to do is like, have something that's very similar to power and just kind of name it slightly different, running estimated power, running, something like that. Like you change the naming a little bit where you're like, hey, we're still going to give you this valuable information because like you probably look at some, this data either from like a Coros watch or a Stride Pod and you're like, this is still really valuable information, but like you just need to get over the naming convention, right? So
yeah. Estimated running power.
Yeah. I think I have a problem with it. In fact, I reviewed the Stride Pods like very early on, probably one of the first videos I did. Like, so we're talking almost not 3 years ago, but almost 3 years ago. And I'm just like, you don't need this product. It's, and this is just this is just an estimation. And I'm pretty sure that Stride saw that and did not like that video at all. But at the same time, it's like, it's not real. It's just this made up number or whatever. And so I do have a hard time with it, and so I kind of agree with Nerve insole on it. At the same time, you can't just not do it. Like at this point, like you're these insoles, like you provide data, like you just can't skip over this. So
I think when I looked at them, my immediate thought was these would be great for a running store to have in their shop.
Yeah,
like where they could do a gait analysis, and then they could put these insoles in and see how your foot's reacting and like that sort of thing seems really pretty valuable. So I would say if they stripped out the GPS chip because it didn't seem that useful to me, and just focused on like the actual like metrics in the sensors and everything and made it a little bit cheaper, I feel like it would become a better product overall.
I wonder, so they are not, so they're using the accelerometer to kind of get a more accurate distance than GPS, but I feel like the GPS was coming from the phone or something like that.
No, there's actually a chip. There's a chip in there. There's a GPS chip.
Yeah. So it does have to detect GPS, but
you can start a run right from the thing and leave your phone at home and run. It'll record the route. But I didn't find it to be like super accurate. In that, like, I'm not even interested in, like, my watch is getting that data. I'm really interested in like, what's my foot doing? That's like the job of this thing. And why I'm wearing extra insole.
I think that some of the distance information was calculated. Like I thought there was multiple ways that it calculated distance, and that I'd have to go back and look at this, but like that if you were to look at the you know how foot pods can measure distance without using GPS, and it kind of ends up being more accurate than GPS.
Yeah.
I feel like they were using the same technology, the accelerometer data, to calculate distance. And so it may be that distance is more accurate, but then your GPS mapping data was not that accurate. So I don't know.
Yeah, probably. All right. We've been on the air for 2 hours, Matt, so we got to wrap this up. I want to thank you for joining tonight. If you haven't yet, make sure you go check out Matt's channel. I'll have it linked down in this description. Thanks for joining, Matt. I really appreciate it. It's been a fun conversation tonight.
Yeah, absolutely.
Give us your final thoughts. Put you on the spot.
Final thoughts. Thank you very much for having me on the channel. I mean, obviously I'm a huge fan. I got all the hats, but, I'm just glad that I found your channel. I remember, really, I don't know. It was like chatting with you on this video. I was like, oh, I have a similar video to you. And then I found you and I was like, oh, wait, you have 3 boys. Oh, that's crazy. I have 3 boys. And then it was like, oh, you're filming with the Sony A7 III. That's what I use. And it was just like one thing after another. And I was like, wow, I have a lot in common with this random guy in New England. And so one of these days I am very much looking forward to like sitting down in person and, having a beer with you. That would be wonderful.
Yeah, man, definitely. I can't wait for this whole thing to be over so we can finally travel and, I can meet a lot of the people I've met through this platform. It's been a lot of fun. With that, I want to thank everybody for joining tonight. It's been a really fun conversation. The chat was really fun tonight. You guys had some great questions. Make sure you check out Matt's channel. Make sure you hit the like and subscribe down below if you thought this video was entertaining. If you listened for the past 2 hours, I'd be impressed. And again, if you're interested in one of the last CTS hats, they're in the link in the description. There's about 19 left. Actually, Hunter just bought one, so I got to ship that out. Thanks, Hunter, for that. And with that, we'll see you in the next one. Thanks, everybody, for joining.